Hey, welcome back to my channel. Shut up, I hate you, you're gonna make this so hard. Okay, well, welcome to Let's Talk with me and Grace. Today, so it's a series where I ask people about a topic that they want to learn more about, or that they already know about, or that they want to talk about, or that they feel like needs to be talked about, and we talk about it. Because why not?
Temptations with the world, and when we are called to be different.
I'm proud of you. Okay, so I wanted to start with just tell us about you and how you came to know Christ and how he's affected your life and such. Just like how you came to know Christ, little key points in your life,
well,
whatever.
I was born into it, so I've always been around it. I kind of accepted Christ when I was like 6, and yeah, I mean, there's been lots of challenging times, like obviously like with friends and like temptations with the world.
Yeah.
Where I'm just like, I go into it and then God's like, no.
It's the best you know.
No.
Yeah.
So, I think like those are like the key points, because then I get like super low and God's like, let me help. Let me help you out. Let me.
I'm Riley. My testimony is on Instagram, so if you haven't already seen it,
Go check it out at riley.axtell. Follow while you want to. Follow while you're there.
you can watch it there, but I'll do a little summary here. So, I was born into Christianity from my family. We were Christians. Went to church, was baptized when I was like a child, like small child. Not like child, but like small child. Went to church a lot, VBS, all that good stuff. Started going to camp when I was 5th grade. Kind of fell on my faith in middle school because of some friend issues and just like a really hard time in my life. And then God basically turned it all around my summer going into high school, and I moved back to where I live now, and it was great, living life to the fullest. I've struggled with like mental health stuff since then, which I'm still working on for sure, but yeah, it's been so good, and God is good. It's been great.
Amen.
So I just want to start with like temptation and just like that topic in and of itself. So how have you struggled with temptation? Like what things specifically have you struggled with?
Well, probably like having to fit in and be like, so basic teenagers are like, oh, like cussing a lot.
Yeah.
Having to have like a significant other. Always having to have like friends, having to dress this way, and I would say like you just struggle with like that's what I'm supposed to have, which is really like no, you don't have to have that stuff. And it's kind of hard because like you want that stuff because you want to fit in so badly, and like you think like if you have that stuff it'll complete you. And like, oh, I'll have that high school experience. And you're like, no.
Yeah. I feel like temptation and like fitting in the world go hand in hand, for sure.
Yeah.
Just because like, I feel like you can't, well, it is said that you literally can't live for the world and for the Lord at the same time.
No. Because you can't like.
Because they're opposites.
You can't have 2 feet juggling and.
It's really hard because we live in the world, so everything around us is constantly telling us, like, hey, do this, you'll be happy if you do this, you'll have more fun if you do this, versus, growing in your relationship with the Lord. But yeah, he wants us to have fun, obviously not in the ways the world tells us to have fun necessarily, but he's not, like, shutting it down. Like, you can't have fun ever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I feel like personally, there's always the temptation of, like, so you're in high school, college level, whatever, to, drink, to do drugs, to party, to
get into bad stuff.
Yeah.
To hook up.
Yeah.
To just do everything that God says.
Whoa. Back it up. You know what I mean? And like obviously no one's perfect, but it's definitely hard to stay away from those things in high school, especially if you've kind of surrounded yourself with it, with the people that you're around, which is just as important, like community, things like that. So it's definitely really hard to go about those things in high school and learn to how to deal with that, with temptation. And those are some that I've struggled with, you know, like the people around me like partying or whatever, or drinking, and I'm just...
Yeah, and it's also like hard because when we like accept Christ, we're different. Like we're not like I'm better than you.
like quirky.
No. It's like you're different from, like you're spiritually different.
Yeah, I actually have the verse for that. Actually, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Where we're called to be different than the world. We're called to stand out, not to blend in.
And like we're not perfect, but we're different. Like we're not being like,
yeah,
obviously.
Okay, so the verse is like, set your mind on things that are above, not on things that are on earth.
Yeah, I have that saved. I was gonna say that.
Colossians 3:2. You can say it later. It's okay.
Okay.
But yeah, it's like that mindset of like not necessarily focusing on everything that's here, because all of this is temporary.
Yeah.
Everything here is temporary, versus like focusing on God and building a relationship with Him, because that's something that's eternal. Like we're gonna go to heaven eventually, so like building up that relationship with Him now.
And like you have to fight your flesh. Like your flesh wants all those things. They
Yeah.
want to party, get into
Drink,
drugs, all that stuff. But you gotta fight the flesh.
That I feel like is the biggest thing, like setting your mind on things that are above. And again, like what you said with the flesh, like you have to fight your flesh, because this world is fallen, we're of sin. Our bodies, like our hearts want sin, like our flesh wants sin. But again, with God, we can help fight that temptation and whatever. Just like how Jesus was tempted.
Yep. And it was another thing, is like God has like such a bigger plan than like some party or some boy or some girl, or like if you're thinking like, oh, I'll miss out, like life is too short, I'll miss out, like you won't.
That's
like,
the biggest thing I've struggled with, is like thinking life is so short, so I have to do everything.
Like I have to do that.
Let me tell you, my freshman year, we don't need to talk about it. There's literally like a notes thing in my notes of like, oh, life is too short, like do whatever you want, like whatever. I posted on my story and everything. I was like, wow, I'm so cool.
But no.
And then I looked back at a year from then and I was like, girl, this is not how it works. Yeah. But yeah, my freshman year, I was just like, I have to do everything. I have to see everyone. I have to do everything because life is so short. And I was, doing things I shouldn't have been doing. I was hanging out with people I shouldn't have been hanging out with. Whatever.
And that's also like what Satan wants you to think too, is like,
yeah,
life is short.
Life is short. Go do whatever you want. It doesn't matter.
Go do whatever you want.
It doesn't matter. You know, when it literally does.
It literally does.
Set your mind on things that are above. It's what the verse means.
And if there's also like a quote, like, if the Bible calls it sin, your opinion doesn't matter.
Yeah.
That's like, yep.
Yeah. I mean, the Bible is truth.
Yes.
Period. And I mean, obviously, again, none of us are perfect. Like, I still struggle with sin. But one thing with temptation is, like, temptation in and of itself is not a sin. Like, when you're tempted, you're not sinning until you do the action of the sin. Which I feel like is a really big thing to realize. It's like, you can be tempted. Like, Jesus was tempted in Matthew 4. He was tempted by Satan. But obviously, he wasn't of sin. He never sinned ever when he was here on earth. So, temptation in and of itself isn't sin. It's until you do that action, then it is a sin. Which I always thought was really interesting. But yeah, I mean, he was tempted and he was like, hey, yo, back it up. I'm literally Jesus Christ. I need you to back it up, dude.
Take it down a few notches.
Yeah. I always thought that was cool. How literally Jesus was tempted just like we were. He was fully man, fully God, and he was tempted. Like, his temptation was equally as tempting as our temptations are today.
Yeah.
And if he was fully human, fully man, like, he literally was tempted the same way we're tempted. But with God, him being fully God as well, he could be, because all things are possible with God. So he was like, hey, yo, stop, back it up. So again, we have to turn to God in the midst of our temptations and be like, back it up. Take this temptation away from me. Take this situation away from me. Whatever the case may be.
Yeah. And obviously, like, praying is, like, such a big thing.
Power of prayer.
And, like, once you get more into the Word, you're not going to be, like, I guess people will say, like, oh, like, I'm Christian, I'm saved, I won't have any problems. Like, I won't be tempted, I won't be this. But, like, no.
That's not how it
you
works.
will be.
Yeah.
We're not perfect by any means.
Yeah, we're still tempted. In fact, I feel like when you like finally like devote your life to Christ or whatever, you're tempted more. Like spiritual warfare.
You're getting so much closer.
Yeah,
where
and Satan just
like,
wants to pull you away from that.
No. So you're just kind of be like, you gotta just keep walking.
Yep, and power of prayer is crazy. So
yeah,
pray it up. But yeah, I just feel like knowing that Jesus was tempted helps me realize like that literally all things are possible with him, because he was literally tempted just like we were. And just again setting your mind on things above, knowing that like this world is temporary. Which not Ephesians, it's Ecclesiastes, right? Is that one book where it's like nothing matters? Yes. That book literally is like, it's such a good book to read, because it's basically him like trying to fulfill himself with things of the world, and just like whatever, just for him to come to realize like I can't be filled by any of this, like only God can fill me.
Yeah.
Which I think that book's really good. When temptation for you, when it like comes your way or whatever, how do you like deal with it, and versus how you think you should deal with it, or do you deal with it how you think you should deal with it?
It really depends on the situation. Sometimes when you're with like a certain type of crowd, I feel like I would like do it without thinking. Like I would know, like I would get that voice being like, that's not right. But
Conviction.
I'd be like, who cares? And then I do it, and then
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, yeah, I shouldn't have.
Yeah.
I feel like obviously with temptation, you could just fight it off or pray about it.
Which is hard. It's a lot easier said than done.
It is. So, or just have to like focus. Like you have to take a few steps back and focus and be like, okay, this isn't real.
Yeah, get perspective.
Yeah. And I feel like if you do pray, it helps a lot, because you just ask like, God, will you take this temptation away from me? Will you not let me fall through them?
Yeah. I feel like it also helps direct your mind too when you pray, because you're changing your perspective to him, and that being like, hey, like this isn't right, like let's like even like just directing your focus to him in the midst of the temptation is a good way to realize that it is a temptation and it's not, you know, what you should be doing. And especially like my biggest temptations come with I'm around other people, for sure. Those are my biggest ones. When I'm around,
fall into those.
Yeah. When I'm around people and I sometimes just don't even think about it, and it just happens, I'm like, oh shoot, you know, or just some of the people that I'm around, sometimes it just leads to those types of situations when it shouldn't, which is again why community is important, and surrounding yourself with people who are striving after the same things that you are.
Yeah, because it can, like if you stick yourself in the wrong community but you're wanting something, that can still like affect you tremendously.
But yeah, the verse that kind of explains like how we should deal with temptation, it's Matthew 26 verse 41, which says, watch and pray that you may not enter temptation. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak. Which is, it tells us right there, like we can't. Temptation is a lot harder to deal with when it's just us, when we're just our flesh, just by ourselves, trying to deal with it and trying to fight it, versus turning to God and be like, hey, you want to help me, King? Because he wants us, he wants to help us, he wants us to talk to him, to call out to him, to pray, things like that. So,
and another thing is like, this is like kind of on a different topic, well not really, but Satan knows like the Bible in and out, through and through, every single page. He knows it by hand, so like, you just reading the Bible, like good for you, like no judgment there, but you have to live by it. Like you can't just read the Bible and then go act like the world.
Yeah, that's good.
Like you can't double standard there.
Yeah, it's definitely hard with that. I definitely struggle with that. Like first starting, I guess I've always been in my faith, but I really like came to know Christ I would say like COVID-ish. Like I kind of came to know Christ like my summer going into my freshman year, but then I really like was like, whoa, like COVID time kind of. And I was definitely struggling like spiritual warfare with like wanting to live in the world and like loving the things of the world, loving that sin, which we are called to hate sin. And so like loving the things of the world and then turning and reading my Bible.
Yeah.
And
or, like going out and doing things that you know you're not supposed to.
Yeah.
And then coming home and be like, sorry, Jesus, why am I going through, like, or you can be like, why am I going through this? Like, I do nothing. But then you go out and you,
and you do the things that
and,
you do.
and you're like, oh.
You're like, yeah. But, again, just turn to the Lord in the midst of your temptation. It's definitely hard, and it's also very good to have other people to talk to about that. About your temptations, about your struggles, things like that. Other people do struggle with the same things.
Yeah.
Which is, again, the importance of community and how it's good to have people to talk to about things like that and hold you accountable.
Yeah.
For sure. Which is also something that God is like, let me just put that in your life. Let me just...
And you can pray about it. Like, if you don't have, like, good friends and you're like, I don't have good, solid friends, like, pray about it. God will put those people in your life.
Yep.
If it's meant to be, it will happen.
Yeah.
Like, don't be like, oh, I'm stuck. Like, oh, she's my BFF. I can't ditch her. Or, I don't know how to ditch her. Or, I don't know how to, like, break up with this boy because, or this girl because he's not of what I want. And it's just a temptation. You just gotta pray.
Yep.
Honestly. And God will be like, let me take care of it.
Another thing about, like, relationships for sure. There's always temptation in relationships.
Yes.
No matter what. There's just gonna be, unless you set those boundaries early.
Really.
Boundaries are so important. I personally have
Standards.
I've been
and boundaries.
But I personally been in a season of singleness. I can't.
We are single. Is this embarrassing?
Singleness.
Is this embarrassing? No. It's okay.
It's okay. And anyway, where was I going with that? I just had to make that joke. But I've been single for a while, which I'm totally fine with. But, like, I know from seeing other people's relationships and learning about what God says about our relationships, boundaries are important. Putting Him in the middle of your relationship and everything you do.
It takes three to last a marriage, and that's you, the person you like, and Jesus.
Yeah, just putting Him in the center of that. That's the biggest thing I want to say about that is, like, boundaries. They're so important.
And standards.
And standards. Do not lower your standards for someone.
God will bring you the person that
He will bring you the
to.
person where you don't have to set you don't have to lower no standards.
And you have to be like, oh,
They're
that's okay.
perfect for each other.
His hair is really good looking, so
It's
that
fine.
standard's okay to go away.
Yeah, it's like that's not how it works. God will bring you the right person for you that is perfect for you.
Yeah.
And you shouldn't have to lower your standards. You shouldn't have to compromise on your boundaries or anything like that. Or they're not the right person for you. Does that make sense?
Like, if they're wanting to be like, we should do this, and you're like,
I don't want to do that, but they keep convincing you, and
that's
then
not the right person.
Yeah, they need to respect you and your boundaries and where you are.
Respect you. They don't respect you.
Yeah. Okay, we're getting into something way different for a different video. But that's the gist of it. Boundaries.
That's the gist of it.
But yeah, so we talked about temptation a lot. I think we covered that for the most part. How we should deal with it. Things like that. Let me make sure I didn't have any other verses about it. Oh, I do. I have one more big thing. So, have you ever heard, I talked to you about this a while ago, but the whole saying of like, oh, God gave you, like, it's like something bad's happening in your life, right? And it's like, oh, God, like, gave you this for whatever reason.
Oh, yeah.
Like when something bad.
God gives His toughest battles to the strongest soldiers.
Yeah, or it's like,
wrong.
Or it's like nothing, God can give you nothing more than you can handle. Or however the verse goes, or not the verse, but the saying. It's like, God will not give you more than you can handle. Mm-hmm. It's not true. Hate to break it to you, people.
Hate to break it to you.
That's not
true. But you
true.
do that to yourself. You get yourself there, and God, because we're at free will.
It's free will. It's
you
because
did that to yourself.
Bad things happen because of the world we're living in,
and
because of some of the decisions that we personally make. But let me pull up this verse because I talked to one of my counselors from camp about this actually,
and he will get you through it.
Yeah, and she had mentioned it, and I was like, hey, you said this. I was interested about it, so I want to ask about it more. It's Corinthians 10:13. It says, no temptation has overtaken you that is not common to man. God is faithful, and He will not let you be tempted beyond your ability, but with the temptation He will also provide the way of escape, that you will be able to endure it. So it says, you'll never be tempted more than your ability. Which that part I was like, how does that work? Like, we literally just said, like, God doesn't give you more than you can handle. Like, how does that work? But it's basically saying that God is always with us, and we can do things with him. Like, he gives us the strength to do those things. It's not us by ourselves, but nothing is too much for him, if that makes sense. And no bad or evil can ever come from him. So those bad things he doesn't give that to us for whatever reason. Because of our free will, and because we live in a broken world, bad things can happen. But for trials and temptations, the only way to get through them is through Christ. Because he is strong enough to deal with those things. Nothing is too big for him. Nothing is too bad for him. But we are not strong enough. We are of flesh. We are weak. Therefore, the idea that God won't give you more than you can handle is not true, because he doesn't give out the bad, and nothing too hard. Nothing is ever too hard for the Lord. And I had one more verse attached to that little note that I had made. It was James 1:13, which says, where's James? I know it's back here. I just forget where it is. Okay. Which says, let no one say when he is tempted, I am being tempted by God, for God cannot be tempted with evil, and he himself tempts no one. So that's right there. Temptation doesn't come from God. Nothing bad comes from God. He is in full control of the situation, and sometimes, the way that I think about it is like, God can pull good from any situation. So that bad thing in your life, sure, he can totally just turn it around in a second, but sometimes that bad thing has to happen before you can grow from it. Like, a big part of my testimony is like, I wouldn't take back any of that pain and suffering that I went through for the world, because it got me to where I am today. Yeah. And I wouldn't have learned as much as I did if I didn't go through that. But nothing bad can come from him. It's all because of the world and the flesh, and because of our actions.
My bad.
But yeah, do you have anything on that?
No, I really think you covered it all.
Yeah, that was the biggest thing that I blew me away when I first heard it, because I've always, especially growing up, I heard, oh, he'll never give you more than you can handle.
You're so strong.
You're so strong.
You're so strong.
And I'm like,
he gives the toughest battles to the strongest soldiers.
Yeah, and then I would like go through something really hard, and I'd be like, I can't do this.
You can't do this.
Yeah, obviously.
No duh. It's not a trend to just love Jesus. It's not like, oh, I'll post on my Instagram because that's what everybody else is doing right now. It's a lifestyle. You have to keep going through it. Yep. And we're not perfect, again. I ain't perfect by any means.
No. But, striving for God, putting him at the center of everything you do, praying, he's got you. The next thing I want to kind of get into is the other half of the video, which is, being called to be different, standing out, things like that. Which my first question on that I had was like, why do you think it's so hard to stand out as a Christian, as we are called to be in this world and the culture that we live in?
Because we're tempted by so many things, and like we want that. Like,
yeah,
Christians are like, you know what? I'm young. I have time to do all the Christian-y things when I'm older.
Yep. But yeah, I just think it's hard in our culture because we're constantly surrounded by sin, especially in this day and age. Like every sin,
keeps getting worse.
Every sin seems to be like romanticized now, I feel like.
Yes.
Like,
I just lied.
Wow. And those are small things. Like, you might be like, lying is nothing. But again, God sees all sin as equal. Like, murder and lying are like same level to him.
Yeah.
Which helps me get perspective on my sin and help me hate it, because we're called to hate sin. But I think that's it's really hard as Christians to stand out, because then we're hated. It feels like by everyone else around us, which is exactly what happened with Jesus. Like, think about it. If the world had Jesus, right? Like, Jesus was here on this earth, and people literally hated him to the point where they killed him. Like, we're gonna be hated just as much as he was. Probably not just as much, but like,
yeah,
we're gonna be hated too.
Who cares?
So, it's not gonna be easy. No one ever said it was gonna be easy, but God's with us in that, and
that makes it much better.
We're called to stand out, and we're not called to live in the world in that sense.
Yeah.
If we as Christians started loving one another as he loved us, how different do you think others' view of Christianity would be? So if we actually started loving people instead of like condemning them for their sin or whatever.
Yeah, it would make lots.
I feel like
it'd bring more people to Christ.
Definitely, because I feel like a lot of people steer away from Christianity and from Christ because of some people who are trying to judge people, for their sin or whatever, and we're literally called to do one simple thing.
Yeah,
it's to love.
Simple thing.
Just to love. You know, like judging. Like we're not called to judge. We have an ultimate judge, who's gonna judge. There's no need. That is not our place. There's no need for us to do that. We just need to love people.
Yep.
Even our enemies, which is hard.
Love your enemies.
Love your enemies, bestie.
Love your enemies.
And I feel like a big thing that goes to that is like forgiving people.
Yes.
Love as He loved us, and forgive as we have been forgiven, which is really hard. Like forgiving people is hard, especially people who have hurt us, like directly.
Through the heart.
Yeah, and you're like, I don't want to forgive you.
Like, I don't. You know, you said some things, you did some things that weren't very nice to me. Why do you deserve forgiveness?
Taking the high road in situations like that, that goes the same way as loving them. Taking the high road is loving them.
Taking the high road.
You know, you still gotta love them. But yeah, I think I have a verse for that. It is John 13:34, which says, "A new commandment I give to you, that you would love one another, just as I have loved you. You are also to love one another. By this, all people will know that you are my disciples if you love one another." So we stand out by like how we love.
Yeah.
Like as
that
Christians.
Is true.
As Christians, and I feel like as the Christian culture that we're in now, we just judge each other.
Yeah.
Instead of building each other up, forgiving each other, loving each other. You know what I mean?
Get these. He Would Love First, please sponsor us.
Not sponsored, actually sponsored by He Would Love First.
Get them because I feel like they're always like a really good reminder. Like when I get really like super upset at somebody, I just look down and be like,
Jesus would love first.
He would not. I'd be like,
He would not be
Jesus
like,
treat this person like
He
this?
would not try to punch him in the face. No. He would love them. Jesus was so patient, boy. I can imagine.
For real.
He was literally like, bestie. I think we kind of already covered this, but like changing your mindset from things to earth to things to love. How can things above? How can that help you stand out as a Christian?
Knowing that this isn't like permanent.
Yeah.
It's temporary. Everything's temporary. Your pain won't last forever.
Yeah. And you should live your
pain
life.
Is only temporary.
And you should live your life for Christ, not for the world. And I just feel like it's such a big thing to realize that like we're not here just for us, you know?
Yeah. Don't be selfish. OMG, that was it. Selfishness. OMG.
Okay, go.
Okay.
Go on your little rant.
Let's go. Okay. So, being selfish is such like a worldly thing. Like you have to be so. Be selfless, because being selfless is what God does. God doesn't be like, oh.
I actually can't answer your prayer right now.
I actually can't.
I'm bowling.
I'm making I'm making a storm right now.
Yeah.
No. You have to be selfless too. And like you have to devote your life to God. Like you can't be like, I'm gonna skip out on like I'm not gonna read my Bible today because I don't want to. I don't feel like getting my Bible
Reading
out.
your Bible will make you feel better. If you don't feel good, I guarantee reading your Bible is gonna help you feel a little better.
But just like being selfless and taking down yourself and not idolizing your priorities or yourself and putting God first.
Yeah.
In everything. Like, you don't like that kid, but does he know Christ? No. So be selfless and go tell him about Christ, because
which goes along with loving.
Yeah.
Them.
Because you might be the person's only chance. And you gotta not be put like things like, oh, he did this to me. That's being selfish. You gotta be selfless and just be like, who cares about that?
Yeah, you just gotta love them. Hey, I'm glad you remembered.
I know. I was like, OMG.
Yeah.
LOL. LOL.
But yeah, I feel like that was really good. Just be selfless. in this world, because this world is very selfish.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not called to be selfish, we're called to be selfless and love others and such. So do that. Okay, my biggest thing I think with this topic is the narrow and wide gate. Have you heard of that?
No.
It's in Matthew 7:13-14. Enter by the narrow gate, for the gate is wide and the way is easy that leads to destruction, and those who enter by it are many. For the gate is narrow and the way is hard that leads to life, and those who find it are few. Good. That's the biggest thing, I think, is like, in the Bible, like, this kind of always confused me as a kid. Like it's talking about heaven, like entering heaven, and saying those who enter it are few. And I'm like, that doesn't make sense. Because growing up in the church, it was always like, oh, if you believe, if you say this prayer, like, you're saved. That's it, you know?
You have to have a relationship.
Yeah, and I was always confused by that, because it was like, entering heaven's not, like, it's not gonna be easy, like, living in him and, like, in his way, in that relationship with him, it's not gonna be easy, and those who end up going to heaven are gonna be, like, few, the way it says it is, like, because so many are gonna think, you know, because they just read their Bible that one time, or because they said that prayer that they're saved, but you have to, like, live it out. And I think that's really important, like the narrow and wide gate. That's one of my favorite parts in the Bible, is the way that it describes it.
Yeah.
Okay, last thing I have. Romans 12:2. It's talking about being conformed to the world. Like, don't be conformed to the world type of beat. Romans 12:2. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the new renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. So don't be conformed to the way of the world, but we're supposed to be transformed through Christ. So it's saying don't just live in the world, which is what we've been talking about this whole time. Like, don't live in the world. That's all we're called to do. We can't live for the world and for the Lord. Like, don't be conformed to the ways of the world. It's tempting and it's hard, and it's really hard not to live in it, but that's not what we're called to do.
Yeah.
We're called to live in Christ. Let me tell you, a life with Christ is much happier than a life in the world.
It really is. Yes.
I've done both.
I've double dipped a couple times.
Yeah, not fun.
Mm-mm.
Not as fun as living with Christ. So, but yeah, I think that's all we have. I'm thinking about making it a series and doing more. So yeah, that'll be good.
Jesus loves you.
Jesus,
God is love.
love today.